Today, Hotspotting published the winter edition of the Price Predictor Index. We publish the index every quarter. It's one of our most popular products. And chief reason for that is that it gives a really in-depth analysis of what's going on in real estate markets across the country. Not like the generalized, pretty shallow, thin data that you get from mainstream media and most of the research company. This is a report that goes in depth, tells you what's going on at street level for most of the towns and suburbs right across Australia. One of the things we do in each edition of the Price Predictor Index is that we highlight the top 10 local government areas across Australia in terms of the number of suburbs with rising sales activity. That's what we're looking for in this report. We're looking for patterns of growth as shown by rising demand as depicted by sales volumes, because that's a precursor to what's going to happen with price goes. In simple terms, if sales activity is steadily rising, that's likely to lead to price growth. If sales activity is falling sharply, as it has done in many suburbs in Sydney and Melbourne recently, it's likely to precipitate a decline in prices. So we look for clusters of suburbs which have that pattern of rising demand, likely to lead to price growth. So we're interested in what's going on in local government areas. It's very rare for a single suburb in isolation to grow. It's usually part of a pattern that applies to the cluster. So we look at local government areas, what's happening in each of the major municipalities around Australia. Which municipalities, which local government areas have the highest number of suburbs with rising demand? Now, the answer to that question in this latest winter survey is two Queensland locations have become joint first. What we call the Brisbane North Precinct and the Sunshine Coast local government area in Queensland. Tonight I want to focus on Brisbane North. I've talked quite a bit in the recent past about the Sunshine Coast. Now, Brisbane North, the reason why we have a precinct within a local government area is because the Brisbane City Council area is so large. In area terms, it's one of the largest local government areas in any of the capital cities. Brisbane's very unusual in that regard, whereas Melbourne and Sydney have dozens and dozens of municipalities, local council areas covering the metropolitan area. In Brisbane, there's just 5, and the Brisbane City Council covers a very big chunk of the north, south, east, west, and inner city. The Brisbane North Precinct is very much middle market Brisbane. It's the northern suburbs of the Brisbane City Council area, those north of the Brisbane River, and it tends to be suburbs with medium prices in the 600,000, 700,000, 800,000. Some are more expensive. There are $1 or $2 million suburbs on Brisbane North side, the middle ring areas of metropolitan Brisbane. There's 1 or 2 with medium prices at the lower end in the 500,000s, but mainstream is 600,000, 700,000. Suburbs like Newmarket, Nudgee and Nunda, Stafford and Stafford Heights, Windsor, Everton Park, Gordon Park, those sorts of places on the north side of Brisbane. It's very much one of the most active parts of the Brisbane market right now. It stands out not only in Queensland terms, but in national terms for the large number of suburbs where demand is rising. And out of that has come inevitably rising prices. Now, if you follow mainstream media, you'll be seeing articles saying nothing happening to Brisbane prices in the last 12 months or in recent years. Brisbane prices are down 1%, or there's been no change in the last 12 months, or depending on whose figures you believe, there's only been 1 or 2% growth. But of course, those generalised figures disguise what's really going on at the coalface. There's lots of precincts within Brisbane and for that matter, any other capital city that are doing something different that can't be described by that generalised figure, the outperformers. And the suburbs of the Brisbane North Precinct are very much in that category. Just to give you some examples, suburbs like Gordon Park and Sandgate, their median house prices have risen by more than 10% in the last 12 months. And then there is a cluster of others like Alderley, Kedron, Everton Hills, Stafford Heights and others, which are up 5, 6, 7%. So against the background that sources like CoreLogic and SQM Research talk about Brisbane median house price down 1% or no change in the last 12 months, these are areas that have outperformed the average. Many suburbs up 5, 6, 7%, and the best of them, such as Sandgate and Gordon Park, up in 11 or 11.5%. Long-term growth rates are pretty solid. Many of the suburbs in this precinct have averaged 5% per year over the last 10 years. Not nation leading, but very, very solid performance during a period in which Brisbane generally hasn't excelled. So the Brisbane North Precinct has received the award as our National Growth Star in this edition of the Price Predict Index, the Winter Survey. In each edition, we highlight the top 10 municipalities around Australia for the number of growth markets that they contain. There's a number in Adelaide featured in the top 10 municipalities in this edition. There are some in Perth. There are some regional areas. But we've selected one, as we always do, as a National Growth Star, and it's the Brisbane North Precinct. Good quality suburbs, middle ring Brisbane market, median prices 600,000, 700,000, 800,000, and plenty of price growth happening there as a result of the increase in demand that we've seen over consecutive quarters. So if you'd like to find out more about that, get the new edition of the Price Predict Index, the Winter 2019 survey, where we look at every town and suburb right across Australia and look at what's happening with sales demand and with prices. It's a unique report. You'll find no other like it anywhere in the residential property market in Australia. It comes out every 3 months, and the new edition we published today, the Winter Survey. So make sure you get yourself a copy by going to the hotspotting.com.au website. That's it for now. That's Hotspot of the Week for this week. Next week, I'll probably be in Mackay, and I'll be talking about what's happening in that market, because it's one of the other markets that show up in the Price Predicted Index with rising demand and all sorts of other factors indicating recovery in that market. But for this week, the Brisbane North Precinct. Bye for now.